Memory transcription subject, GLIM, Venlo rescue. Date, standardized human time, December 1, 2136. The half-day train journey kick-started my confinement with the human. The more time passed, the less I was convinced that we were in Selgil Falls to see Aunt Thyma. We stopped off at a hotel for rest, until the Venlo government brought us a car and a driver. It was clear Noah had our authorities at its beck and call. I was impressed with how well the Gaian could control its instincts and with how thorough its propaganda was. Reading about secret predators within the Federation was jaw-dropping. That rattled my worldview to the core. It was lunacy for the Kolshians to think flesh-eaters could be tamed. Any credibility the Terrans had gained was their fault. Human behavior did prove curious, especially rescue footage of the Gojids. That was negated by the fact that they invaded the cradle. Earth was the aggressor in the conflict. A lackluster excuse about Prime Minister Pyrie staging an assault was their cover for their warmongering. It was an opportunity to conquer the lesser races and begin an empire. But as a former exterminator, I couldn't say I didn't feel a sliver of doubt. Gaians broke a lot of rules that I'd known since birth, whether they were lying or not. I hadn't worked up the courage to ask Noah any questions yet. However, there were a lot of answers I wanted to hear when the beast was forced to cook up spontaneous retorts. Maybe I'm not in imminent danger of being devoured. Unless we're going to a slaughterhouse. Giving HFY space. She hasn't been eating or drinking, and I think Sarah visiting would be a trigger. Tarva was speaking to Noah through a video call. The human pursed its lips. We should give HFY as much time as she needs. If she's not even voicing her concerns, she's not ready. Glim is trouble, but at least his mind is still there. Just be careful, Noah. This isn't the capital, it's a rural area, where Venlo aren't as open-minded. They don't regularly interact with humans. You're not exactly incognito either. Are you worried about me? A monstrous predator like me can scare off a few fanatics. Please, try not to scare anyone. The footage of you chasing Glim is making the rounds, and let's just say, it's a bad look. Human ambassador hunts Venlo cattle in train station. It wasn't like that. Glim could have hurt someone. I had to stop him. I know, Noah. I like to be involved with things myself, but maybe we shouldn't have gotten wrapped up in this at all. We're too high profile to be ordinary helpers. The Gaian scowled. It was your idea to sponsor a Venlo in the first place. You said it was good PR to do our part. And you said you wanted to. Does it really matter whose fault it is? Governor Tarva hissed. No. I just don't want your media team to toss me under the bus. Stars, I hate all of your idioms. Kill two birds with one stone. Cut to the chase. Stabbed in the back. Are there any that aren't about being maimed or killed? One or two. You're infuriating. We'll settle this later. Just be safe, okay? Noah bared its teeth to itself as the Venlo leader abandoned the call. I studied the Gaian for a long moment and considered the adoration in Tarva's eyes. That emotion looked like love, but I didn't understand how such strong feelings could arise toward a monster. Perhaps I should regard the beast with gendered pronouns, like he was a person. Earth's presence was less nefarious than Rissa's dominion, from what I could tell. The empathy tests were convincing, since it was difficult to fool scientists on a neurochemical level. Why had Noah lied to us though? His actions hadn't been innocuous, conning and misleading us. The Gaian ambassador was ignoring my presence. For now, I was certain he was avoiding direct eye contact. His focus drifted to a sign in the distance, which read, Selgil Retirement Home. His hand reached for a visor, and he pressed it across his paralyzing pupils. I wondered what that accomplished, when every Venlo here knew of his predatory identity. Why do you wear your visor out here? I gasped out. The human palmed his chin. Because these are elderly Venlil. I don't want to give anyone a heart attack. Any Venlil over 65 weren't allowed in the exchange program to avoid cardiac episodes. Tithima is how old? I don't know how many years. She's 74, Glim. You were gone for 11 years. No, that's not possible. I'm sorry. I hate to spring this on you, but your aunt's memory is fading. She's in the late stages of dementia. My gaze shifted to the rural landscape, which stretched to the horizon opposite the assisted living facility. A family reunion where Thyma forgot me hadn't been in my imaginings. I was saddened that I hadn't been there to help and to visit her. Had her mind deteriorated because she was alone? Noah hesitated, before moving a hand slowly. His fingers hovered over my wrist for several seconds, giving me a chance to pull away. The Gaian empathetically squeezed my forearm, like a Venlil would with their tail. His touch was delicate and frail. It was clear he was leaving the option for me to withdraw, since I knew from the train station that he was much stronger. There were several things I'd read that weighed on my mind. I couldn't succumb to believing the narrative. The humans were allies with the child-eating Arxer, even if they'd used that alignment to liberate Venlil captives. Their current objective was unraveling the Federation, and they were bestial hunters too. Apparently, Terran aggression had been documented by observers prior to first contact. I can't remember learning about them in school, other than vaguely as an extinct predator race, I mused. The internet claims they've had over 10,000 battles in their history. Hundreds of wars in just the century after your World War. The first one, I whined. How could you ever keep peace? Noah was quiet for several seconds. We have to grow the fuck up. Humans want peace, yet we've only ever known competition. It doesn't come naturally, but we're starting to act like a united planet. The Venlil, always at peace. I doubt that. The Kolshan gentling took hold, and the Farsal sanitized your past. I think you used to be feisty herbivores, until they convinced you of your weakness. And, if we're not as strong, we'll teach you. We'll protect you, with a fierceness you've never seen before. Noah's lips curved up, and I dissociated myself from the rush of fear. Perhaps the constant snarling betrayed his deceit, since the gesture came off as subconscious. The human rushed to cover his mouth, like he knew he'd done something wrong. If threat displays were intuitive, that explained the full-face masks at the hospital. I recalled how the Arxer would snarl just looking at us, licking their lips with appetite. Sapient predators used their teeth to assert dominance in conversation too, from what I could tell. The guards would flash fangs when contesting a particular catch, or boasting of their hunts. The Gaians possessed the same urges. The Venlil driver parked the car outside the nursing home, and Noah opened the door. I felt paralyzed, befuddled by the paradoxical humans. It wasn't clear what to think of them. Their motives were ambiguous, and their mannerisms flipped between hostility and sympathy on a dime. Smiling, or snarling as you say, is a submissive gesture in primates. I understand it is not so for other animals, Noah sighed. I coaxed myself out of the car. Nonsense. How can teeth, bearing? Be friendly? It's about their position. Teeth apart, jaw tension, and lips curled back, that's actual hostility. But teeth together and lips relaxed shows we're not about to attack. So it's saying you don't want to bite? And predators need to communicate that constantly? The Gaian ambassador nodded. Exactly. Venlil don't understand the subtle difference. The few that try to replicate it usually just look constipated, man. I chuckled, in spite of myself. You have these answers well rehearsed. I'm used to explaining everything we do. If I'd explained us better in my speech, 1 billion people wouldn't have died. Since then, I sifted through our evolution pretty thoroughly. Noah's voice turned scratchy, and his ensuing cough sounded a bit congested. Did the Gaian consider himself responsible for the extermination attempt? He'd stated Earth's case pretty well. For 5 minutes broken up by hecklers, guns had been trained on him the whole time too. A non-predator would have frozen in fear. The fact that he gave anyone pause over exterminating warlike horrors is miraculous. Nobody in his position could have done better. The human pawed at his nose before opening the door to the lobby. He gagged at once and muttered something about disinfectant smell. A middle-aged Venlil sat at a reception desk, startling at our appearance. Her eyes went wide with fear and her ears pinned back. She snapped out of it enough to tap a notice with her tail. A sign was taped to the desk, reading, "No humans permitted," in several scripts. The Gaian crossed his arms and leaned back with an intimidating frown. I observed the tightness of his jaw and the slant of his eyebrows. This was genuine hostility. It was worryingly easy to decipher the predator's mouth contortions, once told what to look for. Noah sighed. "See, Glim? Still think we run the show here?" "I don't know. You put up with a lot," I muttered. What, you see can't be here," the Venlil receptionist stammered. "You need to leave. The human, anyway." The Gaian lifted his visor. "I think you'll make an exception for the Terran ambassador. I have powerful friends. There's security footage. Are you going to attack us to get through? You're trespassing. Glim wants to visit his Aunt Thyma. Make that happen, and we'll leave. And no. You're not welcome here, Noah." The veins in the Gaian's neck bulged, and his fingers clenched tighter. His lips curled back to his pink gums, while his eyes dilated. So that was what a primate's aggressive snarl looked like. I skittered back, remembering Noah's warning about intent to bite. I didn't want to be within snacking distance. My inner exterminator agreed that humans shouldn't be prowling our streets and wished for their non-existence. But my sentimental side remembered Noah tucking me in and playing games with HFY and I. If the predator was emulating empathy, he deserved an award. There was more to this conqueror than my arcs or tormentors. The Venlil receptionist wasn't backing down from her statement and was gaining more confidence by the second. She bared her own teeth, reaching for a phone. Perhaps this employee intended to dial exterminators. I was increasingly worried about the Gaian biting this individual. "Don't talk to Noah like that." A Zerulean nurse trotted into the room and glared at the receptionist. "Please, forgive Carleva, she doesn't think highly of your kind. Those flesh beasts drain our resources, and our taxes go to their meat factories. They set up their encampments anywhere, and litter our big cities. Some of them don't even work," the Venlil snapped back. "Earth got bombed to oblivion. Those humans lost family members and everything they own. Wouldn't you be grieving too?" The quadruped flicked her ears, and Carleva slunk off with a look of loathing. The Zerulean nurse shook her head, before approaching Noah with cautious steps. The Gaian refitted his visor, and clasped his hands behind his back. He dipped his head, perhaps to show appreciation. "Please listen, Ambassador Noah. I can't allow you to interact with our patients," the nurse said. Noah hissed in exasperation. "What? I thought you were on my side." "I am. Many of our residents have memory problems and wouldn't know what a human is. A scare at their advanced age could be deadly. You don't want to kill someone, do you?" "Of course not. But Glim's been an Arxer captive for a decade. He needs to see his Aunt Thyma. Why don't I take Glim to her room, and you wait here? Then you leave after, without any unwanted incidents." The predator paced for a few seconds, startling the Zerulean. Even with the visor on, I could sense his unnatural eyes on me. Noah was considering whether I'd run off at the first opportunity, which was a high possibility. He must be feigning deliberation to seem reasonable. Why would he let me out of his sight? The human went to great lengths to track my escape and hunted me in a public venue. He wouldn't release his catch. Okay. Thanks for helping us, nurse. The Gaian sat in a chair, which was comically small for him. I trust you, Glim. The question is if you trust me. I withheld a disbelieving hiss and tried to make sense of my sudden release. Of course I didn't trust a predator after years as a cattle captive. Besides, his introduction started with deceit, which eliminated any chance of mutual trust. Concealing all information about his kind didn't inspire positive thoughts. Noah had done an admirable job of swaying me when I scorned any nuance originally. But our first encounter proved he was a trickster. I followed the Zerulean down a hallway and relaxed as the Gaian didn't follow us. This was a pristine opportunity to escape captivity. I could evade detection better in this less integrated town. The Zerulean stopped outside one door and gestured for me to enter. My ears perked up with hope as I crept into the room. Thyma wheezed on her side, and her facial fur was starkly snow-white. The glassiness in her eyes reminded me of cattle Venmal. Drool was running down her chin. An old sitcom played on a TV, which she blankly watched. Thyma? I whispered. My aunt screeched. Help. There's a strange man in my room. It's me, Glim. I came to visit you. You're not Glim. Glim was captured by the Arxer. Why yes, that was true for 11 years. The humans traded for me. See the neck brand? Human. What kind of species name is that? The aliens, Thyma, the predators. They returned me, your nephew. Lies. I want you gone. You're not Glim. Stop playing. Don't you recognize my voice? Aunt Thyma glowered at me before wailing for assistance. She began unplugging the wires from her arms in a fit and knocked her drinking water from the nightstand. I gaped in horror as the one person who loved me wanted me gone. Tears swelled in my eyes, and I rushed out of the room. The Zerulean medic yelled at me to calm down, but my feet were moving on their own. I was blind to my direction and my surroundings. The facility was a blur. There was nothing left here on Venmal Prime, not even my family. The world had changed too much to process. All I wanted was for Thyma to hold me and whisper that it was all right. My paws wrapped around something warm, and I clung on for dear life. Sobs rattled my body, so I pressed my face into a synthetic fabric. My hugging support tensed beneath my arms, and fleshy appendages tapped my back. I let go with horror as I realized where I'd run. My instincts went back to the predator for comfort. Noah massaged my neck. Shoo. It's okay. You're okay. You don't know what it's like. I screamed. Actually, I do. My dad had Alzheimer's. I'd visit him every weekend, and he didn't remember who I was. He'd tell me about his little boy, Noah, who wanted to be an astronaut, and I'd just smile. But I needed Thyma. Take me back to the facility. Take me back. Anywhere but here. I know it's hard, but it's not her fault. Are you sure you want to leave? Please, get me out of here. I can't lose anyone else. That's not Thyma anymore. You don't mean that. Sometimes, she remembers and she's there, Glim. Tarva's people got her to record those messages for you. She was glad you're home. The Gaian picked me up, a stoic expression on his face. My profession had always taught me that predators should be eradicated, but this was the nicest hunter I'd ever encountered. For some reason, my subconscious felt bonded to Noah. He was a steady presence when everything else was crumbling. I couldn't ignore the evidence from our travels either. The way the Venlo receptionist spoke to my caretaker was irreverent and hostile. Judging from Tarva's phone call, it sounded like open criticism was allowed on the internet too. Those attitudes wouldn't be allowed to circulate if humans conquered our home. Furthermore, the oblivious Gaians at lunch had been discussing morals and sympathy. They had no way of knowing anyone was listening. With my exposure to the Arxer, I knew how different those pitying attitudes were. The Greys considered keeping us as prey to be our rightful state, and they flaunted it. Glim, can you talk to HFY? Noah slid back into the car and removed his visor. You could help us explain it to the other refugees, better than we did for you. Tears dripped down my cheeks. I don't know. Maybe. Okay. And do you still want me to drop contact with you when we get back? The Gaian stiffened, sucking in a sharp breath. It was as if the ambassador was bracing himself for rejection, that implied it would cause him pain if I answered in the negative. Noah's body language betrayed that he cared what I thought of him. The torrent of fear since first contact seemed to have taken its toll. I don't think that will be necessary, I croaked. The human curved his lips. Good. I haven't taught you the half of our body language. My gaze darted out the window, and a shudder crept down my spine. I, of all Venlo, shouldn't be trusting of a lying predator, but I was giving Noah a second chance. Human charisma had swayed my feelings a bit too much. Memory transcription subject, Chief Hunter Isif, Arxer Dominion Sector Fleet. Date, Standardized Human Time, December 3, 2136. The Sol system underwent a serious overhaul since my last visit. Earth's defenses had been insufficient to ward off enemy vessels, and humanity wished to ensure such defeat never happened again. I marveled at the sheer manpower they must have dedicated to reconstruction. According to my sensor data, the humans placed habitats as far out as the Oort cloud. It was impossible to spot the Rushad stations on the viewport. Their super-black paint absorbed almost all light, and their emissions were the only giveaway. A lesser mind might mistake the gravitational disturbances for an astronomical phenomenon. I would assume the UN mimicked our cloaked stations, but they couldn't have developed the technology so quickly. Terrans devised those blueprints on their own. Humans detected my ship among the icy fragments, and nailed me with enough FTL disruptors to fry an army. Nimble fighters raced out to join me, taking up flank positions. Visual contact confirmed to Terran scouts that the incoming vessel was of Arxer make, but that didn't ease their suspicions. Perhaps they assumed the next Dominion visit wouldn't be on friendly terms. The Terran craft had me target-locked, and circled my ship with contemplative intent. Surely their generals realized that despite our solitary nature, our ships wouldn't venture off alone to attack. My mission was diplomatic in nature. I was debating how thoroughly to betray my people. There was also the issue of the 3 Zeruleans, who wouldn't come out when I left drinking water. They must be dehydrated and delirious by now. I hailed the cloaked habitat, hoping humanity wouldn't make any rash decisions. It was unclear if they'd appreciate the tip-off that their hideout wasn't undetectable. An honest appraisal seemed helpful by my standards, but it could also wound Terran pride. That concept meant more to the Dominion than Elias Meyer. However, Mingza Zhao was not as even-keel. You are trespassing in the Sol system, but you know that already. A female human with a dust-colored bowl cut appeared on screen. I recognized her as General Jones, the drone program's lead. To what do we owe the pleasure? I bared my teeth. Humans do not wish to continue open relations. Have you forgotten what we did for you so soon? We didn't expect the Arxer back here, keeping tabs on us. I know a warship when I see one, and I certainly don't like it gunning for Earth. Why do you feel entitled to roam our home system? Because I'm Chief Hunter Isif. You know, the single reason your species is still alive today. The one who gave you an army, sent food to your cities, pulled your dying from the rubble, and traded you the Venlo. I see. My nation thanked you, and housed you. That doesn't mean you're going to lord your aid over humanity forever. You must use proper diplomatic channels, like everyone else. I've gone through your channels, and received a dismissive statement from Zhao. That's unacceptable. I've earned some gratitude, if not respect. What are you going to do, sue us? Malice glimmered in General Jones' eyes, and a defiant smirk tugged at her lips. Fury swelled in my chest, threatening to spill into a roar. I was able to contain it to a growl, but I couldn't believe what ingrates the humans were. The United Nations hadn't been this flippant with me in the past, even after Meyer's death. Why the sudden hostility? I came to help humanity, but now, I don't know whether they deserve it. Perhaps there was some truth to Shaz's claim that the Terrans needed a kick in the teeth. If she took their bold-faced antagonism down a notch, that would be beneficial to my goals. Earth's government warranted a reminder of their precarious position. I was less certain that I could rely on their leaders than ever. Still, humans were the only predators who wanted to end sapient farming. Their lab-grown meat had the power to feed us, and to weaken Betterment's grip on Arxur society. Terrans must see reason again, when I reminded them we were on the same side. Meyer understood how I defended humanity, and kept Gisnel off their back. Concern still hounded me over the 3 Zerolians, hiding on my ship. I'd risked my cover on impulse, and I couldn't have them die after ferrying them here. It was worth brushing off the insult, so that my defective voice would settle down. However, I'd like to hear General Jones issue an apology, down the line. Her contemptful look was grating at my patience. I'm your only ally in the Dominion. The intelligence I can offer you is worth your time, I hissed. The primate cleared her throat. You have something you want to share? Then spit it out. I'll only speak to Zhao. I rule this entire sector, your sector. I directly interact with our government, and keep them off your backs. I deserve to look my equal in the eye, yes. Well, tough luck. The Secretary General is unavailable. Then so am I. You haven't even forwarded the request to him. If your leader can't spare a minute on a call, I can't be bothered to share my thoughts. I said he's unavailable. I will apprise Zhao of any intel you divulge to us. I want a personal chat, human. Are you fucking dense? Jones slanted her eyebrows. How dare? How dare you? I roared. If it was important, if I was Tarva, Zhao would make time. Hell, Tarva herself was more diplomatic than you people. The UN fighters still coasted alongside me, and I barely refrained from target locking them. I was mistaken to think of humanity as a friend. They would always consider us second class to the prey. The option to storm off and communicate with Venlo Prime instead grew more appealing by the minute. If the Terrans hadn't disrupted my FTL capabilities, I would have left in a huff. There was no logical reason the humans would confront an Arxur ally and spit in his face. Perhaps their vengeance had driven them mad. It was clear they were obsessed with Sol's military defenses. Another possibility was that this American general was superseding the chain of command. She could be seeking to claim my intel for her nation alone. Was that it? Was Jones shutting Zhao out of the loop, as a power play? Coups weren't unheard of. Back when unrest plagued Riss, rulers could change by the week. The drone mastermind might resent that she was snubbed for Secretary General in favor of a general from a rival state. Undermining Zhao's regime would fashion the Americans as an appealing alternative. The ostensible status was that humans quieted all clannish tendencies under threat of extinction. The United Nations supposedly helped them work together against aliens. But I wasn't sure Earth's tribes had laid old grudges to rest. General Jones tapped a few buttons before sitting in silence for a minute. Be careful what you wish for, Isif. The Secretary General will speak with you. I was a bit relieved that the American-led forces hadn't done anything rash. Humans were bold enough to try to capture me and convince me to talk through other means. From what I read on my holopad, their interrogation methods could surpass even Arxer creativity. If I'd shared those tidbits with Gisnell, he'd respect their cruelty. A human male appeared on screen, dressed in formal attire. His skin was warm and tan, while his hair was styled as a black crew cut. Forehead wrinkles indicated he was middle-aged, likely with several decades in the service. Anger oozed from his taut grimace, even his shoulders were forward, asserting dominance. "Mr. Secretary General, it's an honor." I forced a placid expression and dipped my head. "I intended for us to meet much sooner." "A shame, yes." Zhao's expression didn't change. "Well, you have my full attention now. I suppose that is what you wanted." "It is?" "That American general was stalling me from contacting you. I fear she may be watching out for her national interests, at your world's expense. General Jones and I have an understanding. National interests mean nothing, with human interests under constant threat. That threat is extinction, and it pays no mind to borders. We cannot afford squabbles." But Jones would not pass along my call. Because I told her not to. I was already listening the entire time, you know. My eyes narrowed with outrage, and I lashed my tail. This Secretary General would blow me off when I came to Seoul to protect his forces. For pack predators with ubiquitous empathy, they had a lousy way of showing it. Who was I kidding, to think humans would help defective Arxer? Dominion rebellion meant nothing to their self-oriented agenda. I knew Terrans still cared about the Venlil, like their own pack. The new Secretary General also lauded the other races that aided Earth, yet sported contempt for the Arxer. Furthermore, they launched new exchange programs with the Yodel and Zerolians, while welcoming defecting herbivores to their alliance. The ever-patient humans found the resolve to train the quaking prey. To my amazement, those efforts were getting results. Obligate carnivores just aren't convenient to their new empire, is that it? Or maybe they cannot forgive our crimes. I gritted my teeth. What have I ever done to you? I helped you and asked nothing in return. I could have conquered Earth, but I treated you as equals. That's the only reason I haven't ordered Jones to capture you, Isif, Zhao said. With what we know today, you're no friend of humanity. Listen carefully and tell your boss, we are not supporting agendas that go against our interests. What are you talking about? Our interests are the same. We both know that's not true. You are adamant about Fal and Silas being glassed, and humanity following your every command. We are not your puppets. What? You've gone mad, Zhao. The Dominion knows you are weak, and they won't tolerate your interference. I'm trying to keep weak predators alive into the future. Weak? We are not weak. We are young, and growing exponentially. I hissed in exasperation. Then give yourselves time to grow. Fal and Silas do not help your human-first agenda, am I right? It's about the principle of encouraging our enemies to surrender. Besides, if we forked over the Tillfish and the Harchan worlds without a fight, it would cement this human weakness in your minds. I will not set that precedent. The Arxer shall respect us. Secretary General Zhao cast an unwavering glare at the screen. As much as I wanted to unload on him, departure from Seoul required humanity lifting their FTL disruptors. Securing a ride out might require groveling. Politeness was mandatory for my request to leave. But at this point, I had no intent of passing along Shaz's plans to Earth. It felt like a betrayal that the UN would dismiss my high-risk friendship with humanity. How could Terran say our interests weren't aligned, unless they were unwilling to help us? I thought we both sought a better future, and a change in the Arxer government. My defective voice wanted the hominids to like me, and accept me as one of their peers. A delirious scream echoed behind me, and my head whipped around. One of the Zeruleans had climbed atop a table, in the camera's backdrop. It was the one who'd been crying in the cage, though she looked worse for wear. Her lips were dry from dehydration, and her eyes were half closed with fatigue. I could see desperation glitter in her pupils. "H-Human. Help us, please," she croaked, in a ragged voice. The Secretary General leaned forward in his chair, and his eyes widened with alarm. His jaw clenched shortly after, as he recognized the Zerulean's paltry condition. While I appreciated that Zhao loathed our cattle practices, the quadruped's deterioration wasn't my fault. I'd risked my hide to rescue them, and I had provided for them. Was I supposed to flush them out at gunpoint, to drink water? "So that's why there are 4 life signatures on your ship." The Terran's voice was low and charged with fury. I noticed his hands typing at a holopad, likely communicating with Jones' forces. "You're using our friends as bargaining chips? You'd commit acts of terrorism in the Sol system?" I shook my head. "It's not like that. I brought them here so you could send them home." "Yeah, right, conveniently forgot to mention their presence, huh? Is that your food for this week? Filthy crock. That's it. I will fucking rip you from limb to limb, you puny branch swinger. I will carve out your itsy-bitsy canines, and embed them on my armor as a prize. You won't be doing anything. I was planning to catch and release you, but you're better taken out of the equation. The United Nations will be bringing you into custody, ISIF." I tried to attempt evasive maneuvers, but the UN blew out my propulsions with a single hit. My weapon system was malfunctioning, and I found the glitch rather coincidental. The Terran fighters flanking me used mechanisms to latch onto my hull seamlessly. Sparks flew behind me, as humans began breaching into the cabin. The Zeruleans bounded up to the noise, yipping for aid. The world took on a red hue, and anger overflowed into my consciousness. Feeling the need to attack something, I swung my claws at my dashboard. Electricity arced through the air, as I tore a chunk of metal out of the pedestal. Adrenaline led me to blindly throw the debris, and it nearly landed atop the Zeruleans. Realizing I'd almost harmed them snapped me back to lucidity, though I was still steaming. Why is Zhao doing this? I was a valuable asset to him, from a logistical standpoint. The Secretary General leaned into another holopad. "This is a high-value prisoner. Bring him in, alive. I want to know what he knows." "You're making a mistake," I roared. "Why are you doing this? For one, you've learned too much about Earth's revamps. The element of surprise is important, if worse comes to worst. An enemy chief hunter can't ruin that for us." "Enemy? Meyer knew I'm not your enemy. We want the same fucking thing, Zhao." Meyer was naive. He couldn't see an enemy if they were holding him at gunpoint. I curled my lip with disdain. "You don't believe I'm an ally, just because I'm an Arxer." "No, I don't believe you're an ally, because we've obtained Arxer reports, including Shaz's partial transcript of your visit." I leaned back on my haunches. Understanding dawned on me, as I realized that the United Nations had tapped into our communications network. Meyer understood how I played things up for effect, but that knowledge hadn't been passed on to his successor. Perhaps my acting was a bit too superb, if it fooled the very people I was protecting. My offense over Terran aggression was gone, once there was some basis for their behavior. This was all a misunderstanding. It should be easy for me to clear things up. Of course Earth wouldn't welcome someone who claimed to be using them in a war. It didn't help that I insulted Zhao in my speech, though such rhetoric was tailored for a different audience. "What is it you think that I said?" I hissed. "I'm using humans to make the Dominion the supreme, unchallenged power." "Oh, what about this one? The UN are clueless to our aims, because Zhao is blind and on the warpath. You can't take that at face value. Read between the lines. You're intelligent. I was trying to talk Shaza down. She wants to nuke your prizes, with your forces still there. We know that. And we know your rationale against an attack was, not yet, save our strength. A metallic section of the wall toppled inward, and Terran soldiers stalked inside. The primates almost tripped over the Zeruleans, who ran toward their entry point. The humans rounded on me in formation, wearing goggles over their eyes. After a moment's hesitation, I sunk to my knees and raised my paws in surrender. Why would you tell me you know all this? You're tipping your hand, I growled. The Secretary General sported a malevolent grin. Because you're never going to tell your people any of it. A dart embedded itself in my neck, and I plucked it out on instinct. My head felt a bit woozy before I lost my balance. The humans crept closer, readying more sedatives in case the dosage was inadequate. My eyes fluttered, and my vision shrank to a pinhole. There was no hope of talking my way out of this situation, and it wasn't the Dominion who did me in like I imagined. My undoing was assisting alien predators, who never planned for me to leave the Sol system again. Memory transcription subject, Slanik, Venlol Space Corps. Date, standardized human time, December 3, 2136. The dark thoughts didn't catch up to me until we circled back to our main base, within the Tillfish metropolis. During combat, the survival instincts humans drilled into me prevailed. Emotion was something to be shut down, because it would interfere with our mission. But alone with Marcel now, I began to worry what the Terrans had awakened within me. There must be a reason I hadn't written my parents, since our deployment to the cradle. I had every opportunity to send a message home to Venlol Prime, yet I neglected the task of telling my folks I was okay. What kind of son would leave them in the dark, while bouncing between war zones with predators? They had just buried their other child. My brother had perished in combat with the Arxer not long ago. I powered through during the battle, but images of that Tillfish falling lifeless haunted my mind. The scariest part was that I hardly felt anything over pulling the trigger. Marcel said, to paraphrase, that only a sociopath wouldn't feel conflicted over their first kill. Why did I feel proud, when the dust settled? What if my family thought I had become a predator, when they saw how much I'd changed? Taking a life should have rattled me more. Yet I feel only hatred for those who would threaten the humans, just a pit of rage. Marcel penned a letter home every day, since FTL comms couldn't reach Earth. The red-haired human was manning the UN supply tent, as we waited out our shift. Our locale was open for public grievances, as promised. Unfortunately, for the second day in a row, nobody wandered into a predator encampment. The humans needed to find a different way to connect with Scylla's populace. Marcel smacked the paper he'd written. How does this sound? The UN specifically sought out people with a love of insects and arachnids. Hell, entomologists are shortlisted for the diplomatic corps. Guess they couldn't find enough bug lovers, because I'm stuck here. I think you're running out of things to tell her. You've already talked about your discomfort, I remarked. No, this one is about how they're selecting people. Slanik, we didn't have to be here. Humans and Tillfish shared that feeling of, stay the fuck away from me. A mutual agreement to that end could have avoided this shit. I think such an agreement would be wrong too. We felt that same way about humans. Was the exchange program a mistake? No, of course not. We're nightmares to the Tillfish, and they're nightmares to us. I just meant we didn't have to kill each other over it. Avoidance was possible. But when we cleared the rogue settlement, that wasn't avoidable. Didn't we have to kill them, Mark? Didn't you like cleaning up the neighborhood patrols? The Terran stared at me for a long moment. I don't like killing anyone. I told you at the protest, it's a last resort. Life is precious, right? You humans just shut the kill switch on and off as you please. What the fuck are you on about? It's easy for you to commingle violence and empathy. Your emotions never run amok, but they're never absent either. Maybe Venlil instincts exist for a reason, because we shouldn't flip that switch. Marcel placed his letter down, and his mouth fell into an O shape. The human inspected me with piercing eyes, scanning my mannerisms with ease. This was my closest friend in the universe. It was like he could peer into my soul. Doubts racked my mind, along with shame and fear. What if the training from Sarah's instinct program had gone too far? Was I turning into someone I didn't want to become? "Slanik, are you okay?" the Terran asked. I slumped my shoulders. Violence should sicken me. I'm a Venlil, a timid one at that. I blew someone's head off. But I can't make myself feel guilty. Easy, buddy. There's no right way to process your experience. You were focused on surviving, and now you're confused. Because you feel like you had to, because you think our mission is justified. I regret that I had to kill them, but I don't wish they were still alive. The alien leaned back on his haunches, running a hand through his auburn hair. I could see Marcel's scarred face contort as he contemplated what I said. My human must be horrified by these words, though his kind were excellent at masking negative reactions. Scathing judgments must be running through his brain at this second. I wasn't the innocent Venlil he'd befriended. I remember how proud Marcel had been at my first combat simulator, and how fervently my human encouraged me. He'd warned me not to change myself, certainly not for his sake. Now, I saw the changes he was referring to. The program taught me to manage my fears, but I'd lost my identity along the way. A soldier without empathy was no more trustworthy than a coward. I'm still a liability to Marcel, just in a different way. He deserves a better Venlil as his buddy. The vegetarian chuckled, and shook his head. Hey, I set a building on fire, because I hate the exterminators. It's okay to hate those sadistic fucks. You're a more aggressive species. Times are changing, Slanik. Upbringing plays a large part in. Mandibles clacked outside the supply tent, and a young tillfish scuttled through the flap. Marcel instinctively tugged his legs back at the child's approach, and forgot our conversation. It was a bit amusing how the human forgot to breathe. How could this soldier endure a shootout with dozens of insectoids, but a close-up kid mortified him? The tillfish child moved a leg along Marcel's arm with curiosity. I think the sleeve cuffs baffled our visitor. The red-haired human gulped, and made a visible attempt to relax. His pale hand fished into a drawer, and for a moment, I feared he was grabbing a gun. Perhaps I should have stepped in, instead of having a chuckle at his instincts. Marcel secured a small stick beneath his fingers, which had a circular object resting atop it. He undid a wrapper over the sphere, and held it out to the tillfish. The child giggled, accepting the gift. His compound eyes studied the specimen, not understanding its purpose. "That's a lollipop, son. You suck on the red circle, it's sugar." The human spoke in a gentle voice, though it was fraught with discomfort. "Just don't eat the stick. That's not food." "Thank you," the tillfish squealed. "I'm Vernt. Wanna be friends?" "Sure. I'm Marcel. You're a brave little guy, aren't you? You know, my daughter, Nulia, loves sweets too." I flicked my ear in amusement. "Wait a second. Mark, you brought candy just to give to tillfish children? The ones that creep you out?" "Of course I did. You really don't know me at all, do you? And you brought Venlil plushies on the cradle for Nulia." "That wasn't for Nulia." "Is that judgment I hear, Slanik?" Vernt pawed at Marcel's leg, asking to be picked up. The human shivered, but helped the child onto his lap. His hand drifted atop the insectoid's exoskeleton. His cheeks were ashen with visible disgust. Terrans acted like tillfish carried some lethal disease. The fear wasn't founded on being eaten alive. Despite the comparisons, it wasn't the same brand as our instincts toward them. General Burla staggered into the tent, antennae flailing with fear. Her mandibles clicked at the sight of Vernt cuddling with the predator. I gauged from her stricken demeanor that this was her son. Her 6 legs blurred with motion, and she snatched the youngling away from Marcel. The kid squeaked in protest, clinging to the lollipop. The insectoid held her son close for a long time, and Marcel watched with a casual stare. As the sole Tillfish general to vote against Earth's raid, Burla must have had her reasons to spare the hunters. But it was clear from our brief interactions that she feared what the Terrans would do to Silas. Certainly Burla can see how sweet Marcel was being, I mused. And how hard he works against his own instincts. Burla straightened her antennae. I told you never to touch the humans. I also told you to wait outside the tea tent until I got permission. Humma is nice. Very nice, Humma. We're friends. Vernt clicked. Humans do not like us. I explained this to you twice. Soldier Marcel, I'm sorry. No, it's fine, really, please, don't tell the little guy that. I don't mind, the vegetarian said. I've visited human units across the mercantile region. I can see plainly that you do mind us. What do you mean? Have we done something wrong, General? You're the predators here, but you're afraid of us too. There's always someone who gets startled, and even a few that scream like prey. I don't want you to hurt Vernt out of fear. Marcel narrowed his eyes. I was never going to hurt him. I'm sorry if I overstepped, giving him that treat. No, it's fine. I'm just trying to understand humans. Everything I learn adds more questions. What about us alarms you so much? Air, on our world, insects indicate rotting food and contamination. We see tillfish as harbingers of disease. My brain screams to get you away, as fast as possible. But I know you're not a threat, and I'm sorry that I feel that way toward you. General Burla was silent for a long moment, before releasing Vernt from her grasp. The tillfish child bounced back to the human, and nuzzled his warm leg. I expected the Terrans shudder this time. Marcel's biological responses made sense from an evolutionary perspective, especially through the lens of ancient predation. Meat stores must attract disease-carrying insects frequently. This wasn't exactly the insight I hoped to extract from the Terran. Because of the incursion, Marcel hadn't fully addressed my personal concerns. I did feel better having the truth off my chest, but I hadn't spilled my familial distancing. Part of me wondered what the human was saying about upbringing. Had I branched off so far from my roots that I was unrecognizable to other Venmal? I'm sorry that I'm afraid of you too, Burla sighed. That's why I voted against hitting Earth. There wasn't an argument for it that wasn't speculative, based in fear. Marcel pursed his lips. Fear comes from the imagination, not reality. I sure hope I'm not as terrible as you imagined. No. If you're wondering why I'm here, it's because I wanted to talk to you. It's obvious how much your Venlil adores you, and I know who you two are. I'm sure you've heard that before. Unfortunately. Everyone who tuned into Noah's speech, trillions of aliens saw me at the worst moment of my life. Sorry. That was insensitive of me. I shouldn't have brought that up. The red-haired human took the empty lollipop stick away from Vernt and dropped it in a trash bin. I was curious to try one of those sweets myself, though it might sound childish to ask. Marcel misinterpreted my stare and beckoned with a finger. I mewled as I approached and pressed my ear against his nice nails. The Terran soldier smiled. It's all right, Burla. If you're here to talk about something serious, I must ask why you brought your son. Vernt likes the hummus on TV. Thinks you're fun and squishy. I let him tag along, since it might make him stop asking about you. I don't want him reported for predator disease, even if I, see the signs too. I tilted my head. That is a serious prognosis. You should get him screened soon. No normal child isn't scared of predators, at least a little. Slanak. Marcel hissed. Predator disease is your catch-all term for anything outside herd normals. You want this kid electroshocked for being curious about humans? No, I just think it's in the community's interest to be vigilant. Burla is his mother, and she admittedly sees the signs. We are going to have a long talk about this in private. General, there's nothing wrong with Vernt. Don't let any bigots tell you otherwise. Hama likes me, the Tillfish child cheered. Yeah, I sure do, kiddo. Sorrow tugged at Marcel's expression, spilling into the occasional pointed look at me. I saw a glimmer of protectiveness in his gaze, while Vernt played with his bootlaces. The human was more judgmental over suggesting a medical screening than my admission about my first kill. It was like my best friend thought I wanted to hurt a child. It's sad that some people are a danger to society. We can help a few of them, if we catch it early. The vegetarian swallowed. Anyhow, to business. What can I do for you, Burla? I've heard reports of UN divisions picking up and leaving in a hurry. Many Tillfish see it as a victory, driving off human invaders. But I know there's something more going on, she explained. I haven't a clue what you're talking about. Nobody here's left. It seems the units in the big cities are the last to leave. It's like the UN wants their departure to go unnoticed. If I'm right, I expect them to pull you guys out within the hour. Is that so? I told you we hoped a ground occupation wouldn't last long. Maybe the UN is stepping back now. My ears perked up with hope. General Burla had no reason to lie about Terran actions. Did that mean the predators were moving us somewhere else? It was clear that the locals didn't want us on Silas, so a hands-off approach might be best. The humans didn't want to be here longer than was necessary anyways. All UN personnel, please proceed immediately to your evacuation zone. A monotone human voice poured through the PA system, with impeccable timing. Do not use public transit or contact the natives. Avoid combat engagements if possible. Orbital threat level is severe. Burla's antennae flailed. What? Orbital threat level? Are you airstriking us into a submission? Of course not. Marcel growled. That message is referring to an external threat. It can only be the Greys to merit such a hasty response. The Arxer? No. We surrendered to you to stop their genocide, and you're just leaving us to die. What about the Tillfish down here? I hear what you're saying. If evacuating civilians isn't a primary directive, then our escape must hinge on not being slowed down at all. The UN could be expecting an attack within the hour. Broadcast a message for civilians to get to bunkers, at least. Please. I'm sure we will. Come with us, Burla. We're getting out of here. Fear returned to my bloodstream as I noted the eerie similarities to the cradle. To say those memories rattled me was an understatement. But if Marcel and I escaped that chaos, there was no reason we couldn't do it again. At least this time, the bombs hadn't started falling yet. Back then, we hadn't known the Arxer arrived until Gojid settlements were being leveled. With no time to waste, we cleared out of the tent quickly. The Tillfish general followed Marcel, who was toting Vernt into his arms. I hurried after them, and the human only glanced back a single time. The vegetarian must be livider about my predator disease comments than I thought. Why would he let a small disagreement cause a rift between us? I'm sorry, Mark, I offered timidly. Marcel sighed. You're only sorry because I'm pissed. I'll accept your apology when you know why you're sorry. Distant flashes twinkled on Scylla's largest moon, which I assumed housed planetary defenses. It was uncanny to see a full-fledged battle, reduced to white and orange dots amidst blackness. Ships must be clashing overhead, as the UN fleet fought to restrain the enemy. It put into perspective the staggering distance between us and a higher orbit engagement. Explosions continued to flood the sky, with increasing frequency. I wondered if any stargazing civilians had noticed the indicators. The nighttime was a microcosm of death. A ticking clock was hiding in plain sight, marking our dwindling time to get off this world. I hoped the humans fared better in Scylla's initial defense than the catastrophe of the cradle.